Here's the question. What's the connection between the extremely remote and forgotten Burmese Delta and a psychology BA from Warwick, you might well ask. Now go. The answer is a lifelong career in international qualitative market research. So I have a company in England, but over 20 years we also operated in the Burmese market. We learned how to move cash around discreetly, and the MZ here got used to my business and didn't query my visa applications, a very important point. Now, where is this Burmese Delta? The politics and commercial value of Burma is now in the headlines, but the extreme delta in the southwest is still very remote and forgotten. This little area here is about 60 miles by 125 miles. Move on. On May the 2nd, 2008, Cyclone Nargis hit. There was a tsunami and winds of about 170 miles an hour, and it killed 170,000 people and displaced 250,000 homes, wiped them out completely. This has never, ever happened before in Burma. It's a historically unique and very devastating thing. So things that were devastated, homes were flattened or disappeared, livelihoods... Move on. These are my own photographs, by the way, they're not stock photography. A lot of homes were flattened, a lot disappeared. People's livelihoods were destroyed, for some people forever. The owner of that boat didn't have the money to try and get it back onto the water. And that's just people's homes by the side of Borgli River. Okay, I was worried about speaking too much. That's drinking water. That's what happened to the drinking water. It affected diets and agriculture, both ways, because it became saline and foul. But the worst effects followed the cyclone. For nearly a month, the then regime in Burma blocked international aid. The INGAs weren't allowed to go in, while the Burmese NGOs were randomly arrested for doing something in the Delta. And we, that is my friends and I, had to work under all of that thing. I got this cartoon out of the internet. I thought it was fantastic. It was a Burmese cartoonist who drew what the situation was in Burma. Yangon, or Rangoon, was relatively blessed. Whilst the internationals were arguing the toss with the regime about whether or not they could go in there and help, the ordinary people from Rangoon went off by themselves to help in the Delta. And that's a picture I took from the back of my Jeep. As did also many overseas Burmese diaspora, me for one. These are just ordinary people going out. So with my local market research team and established connections, we deployed our cash and our logistical experience and delivered rice, lentils, oil, etc. to literally thousands of survivors. I also had the help of a military-looking sort of jeep, which I can explain later. So when I was out there and asked what further help they needed in the villages, the single most requested thing was, please, can someone rebuild our schools? And that's what the schools looked like if they were still standing at all after the cyclone. It's very sad. So started our charity, Helping the Burmese Delta, it's called. We decided to build schools and deliver paramedical training under the government radar. It's not an easy regime to work under. And so that's a typical school, by the way, as we found them. So here's our schools, from the old and damaged to the new and the dry, from mud floors and leaky covers to wood flooring and metal roofs. That's what we're trying to do. This is an earlier generation, it doesn't have a metal roof. For our building work, we took skilled crews and carpenters to the Delta, but every able-bodied villager was engaged and committed to help the team. So we were carrying concrete blocks off the boats. These are our carpenters. And this is how health and safety works in Burma. There isn't any. You just do what you have to do. So here's one of our finished schools, including a toilet block, as you'll notice. We include benches, blackboards, books, equipment, and school uniforms. As well as building the school, we have to give them the equipment inside. And we also think about their water supplies. In the dry season, for about 3 months, there's absolutely no rain and certainly no running water. So we provide indigenous storage pots, so there's clean drinking water for the children for those 3 months. That says drinking water. Can you believe that in the middle of all that shit? So this is the first bought toy this little boy has ever seen. We give them toys as we're giving out all the academic stuff. We have opening ceremonies, and so he was just playing by himself, and we happened to get a picture. They love those toys, those Rubik's snake things. They don't have bought anything out there. It is the poorest place in Burma, probably in many parts of the world. So far, we've built 21 community schools. Not all of them are marked on this map. And they're all in the middle of nowhere, somewhat like the Australian outback, except with the monsoon. And the first ever high school funded by a donation from the Australian Embassy. And on the way, there's some Norwegian property which I was asked by her relatives to deliver to its owner discreetly, about 20 years after when she was given it. I don't know if you can recognise who she is and what it is I'm giving her. Bit of Nobel, but actually she was being her usual cool self, but it's the Christmas puddings that excited her the most. So our greatest pride is the high school and its students. They have such strong, wide-ranging ambitions, and I should say that Burmese society has no gender discrimination nor glass ceilings, never has. Just usually no money for schools. So what next? We're planning to add a small library, a computer training room, and solar power for the homework. And finally, we've also started a year-long paramedical healthcare project, the second. And this is how a career extension from my psychology degree from Warwick has played a part in thousands of people's lives. I couldn't have done it if I hadn't had the experience of the market research, anyway, covertly. I was able to use that knowledge to somebody else's advantage. So there we are. The point at the bottom that's missing is how it's amazing how far you can go with a little degree from Warwick.
Fascinating. Any question from the floor? Let's start with that gentleman there. Yeah.
When you say working under the radar of the regime, what does that mean? Are they actively stopping you? Or?
Yes, they arrested. Not enough space in here to say, but initially when we first went out into the Delta, we all had to pass checkpoints, and luckily they managed. They were so overwhelmed by those thousands and millions of cars that I showed in that picture that in the end they just said, oh, fuck it, and they opened the floodgates and let us all go through. So that's one way I got through. I had a military-looking Jeep, just by accident, but I realised afterwards that's why they didn't arrest me on the way out of the Delta that night, the first trip, because I saw lots of people being arrested on the side and wondered why they were waving us through, me and my big lorry as well. And afterwards, I found out that, the next time I went out on a daytime trip, I found these people all going like this every time I went by. The Burmese way is like this. And they thought I was one of the general's wives. When I'm on the ground and actually speaking to people, I still speak my language, well, I'm told unusually well, considering I've been away from it for all these years. I had 26 years of being not able to go back to Burma. I wasn't allowed in. But I somehow, because of my market research work, again, I was able to keep the language going. You have to run group discussions in qualitative research. Talking to 8 animated Burmese housewives about some product, you really have to have your language. And it has to be up to date. I had childish language. I had to grow up and learn grown-up language and modern Burmese. So when it came to bullshitting my way through various situations, I know English friends who went out to help were just turned back with a gun in their faces and told to go back to Rangoon. They just looked at me, and if there is a problem, I say in my best Burmese equivalent of, what's the problem? What's up? And they say, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were a foreigner. And they let me go through. Because I'm rather bigger than the average Burmese these days, and I'm also a bit whiter, and my clothes don't look very Burmese. But as soon as you speak the language, they utterly forgive it. They say, oh, you must have... Either they say you must have spent a long time learning it, and I say, yeah, I spent a whole lifetime learning this. Or they say, you must be one of those diaspora ones that live overseas, which is kind of true, and that makes us kind of grow different somehow. We do look paler, we have our hair's different, My hair's not as big hair as it was in the graduation picture. But so I used my voice mostly and throwing out as much Burmese-ness as I could. And on one time being challenged, I don't have a valid Burmese passport anymore. Somebody on one of the boats challenged me, and I just said, what do you want? You want my birth certificate? Do you want to see my passport? I had an old one that I was going to show them. And he said, oh, no, I'm so sorry. I thought you were a foreigner. And, you get away with it. But basically, you don't talk about it to the authorities. I didn't register my charity there. We are about to register it. Now the regime's different. There's a new regime. Things are changing. But at that time, you ran the risk of being put away for some time. But luckily, my host in Burma, my school friend, is a maritime lawyer, so I was banking on her getting me out of any situation. It was her jeep I was using. Sorry.
That was absolutely terrific and very inspiring. I just wanted to ask you, initially when they wouldn't let any funds into the country, how did you raise the funds to build those initial schools?
First of all, I raised money in England, and first of all, it was food runs, actually. It wasn't school runs initially. To actually go and feed them. 9 days after I was watching everything on telly, thinking it'll all be all right, the UN's there, Ban Ki-moon was having dead trouble trying to get through. So I thought, no, this is not happening. People are going to die. So I wrote emails to all my friends. I did the old Barack Obama technique, a bit of snowballing. I sent some emails around to clients and friends saying, well, I'm going to Burma to go and feed these people. So if anybody wants to give me money, give me some now. And it was as crude as that. I thought, no time for bullshit, let's just get on with it. So actually, I got loads of checks coming through because most people were withholding all their charity because they didn't believe DFID would get it through, which it didn't. Whatever DFID tries to tell you, they didn't get the money through. Save the Children didn't. The Americans with their warship full of help had to go back to America, etc. It was all happening. So I just said, somebody from England said, well, what makes, if the UN can't get in, what makes you think you can? I said, like this, I'll go there with money in my pocket, I will buy some rice and I will go and feed them. So she said, well, how can you do that? If we've had the tsunami, the cyclone swept right through the southwest of Burma, burnt itself out in Bangkok. And so they thought, people here think that, it's a total wipeout of everything, but of course Rangoon is full of brick buildings and rice is still in stores there. So I just said, look, I'll go to a shop in Rangoon and I'll buy some rice and I will put it in a car, I will take it there. The mistake I made in that period was not realizing that rice, when I ordered 250 sacks of rice from a school friend who's now a rice exporter. So I said, I'll have 250 sacks. And she said, I'll add 150 sacks to yours because I want to donate. I was thinking of the sacks you buy in England. And they were $9 a sack, so that kind of made sense, But actually, a sack in Burma, an official definition of a sack of rice at that time was 49 kilos. Well, I didn't know this, and I kept wondering why she was pressing on me, all the boys from her office. She said, would you like to have a lorry? I said, nah, I'll put it in my Jeep. And then she insisted, so I thought, I'll be polite, because she's given me 150 sacks. So I said, okay, I'll have a lorry. I thought, then I'll drive it, because at Warwick, I used to move house for all our friends with those box vans and things. I knew how to drive those things. And she said, no, I think you'll need a driver. So I said, okay, all right then. When I saw what's 150 by 250, I'm not good at maths, I'm qualitative, but, nearly 500 sacks of rice, or 400. When you multiply that by 49 kilos a sack, and I couldn't even lift one sack. Thank God she gave me 14 boys from her office, as well as, all these other people, ex-market research field workers. And, when I saw the lorry, it's one of those that crosses countries, crosses the continental boundaries. It's like those huge things. I'm so glad she was there to help. Really, I was glad, because there's no way, especially on the first trip where the hydraulics went. And of course, Burmese have had to be resourceful. So the driver shot underneath the vehicle, no health and safety, and he and another helper mended the hydraulics under there, and then we drove on. I mean, I owe so much to so much, but to tell you about the money thing, because I'd spent 20 years market researching in Burma, and all that time it was a much worse regime. I had to bring money into Burma. There's no banking systems or anything at the time. Everything was cash. I used to put $10,000 or $15,000 in cash, which doesn't take up much space, in my pocket or in my bum bag. That's how I used to go in there. And so I knew how to take money in, so that's what I told these English. Give me some money, don't worry about it, I will take it in. And I know how to spend it over there. I mean, to give you some sense of scale now, I think we've now raised our 300,000th pound round about now. And just a couple of days ago, even the guy who runs eBay gave us, for some peculiar reason, £7,632. You know, it's beginning to be in the ether out there. If people want to do something for Burma, it comes up. Helping the Burmese Delta sounds like a mouthful, but it expresses exactly what we're doing. So people find us quite quickly, so that's how also we raise money. But most of it came from my friends initially. And it's only after about 4 food runs when I said, look guys, you know, what do you want us to do? Because my English friends want to help. And they said, please, can somebody build schools? Because otherwise they'll be learning under the trees. Term starts on the 1st of June. This happened on the 2nd of May. So, you know, I feel quite tearful actually. I'm thinking about it. You know, they were very tearful. They said, how come that when I explained that this wasn't me that was giving this to them, that this was all from all my friends in England, and they said, but how come that these total strangers over that half of the world are helping us when our own government won't even come and look? To this day, they have done nothing in the Delta, not one thing. Though they've now adopted our schools. There's a system where if the government adopts a village school, then that school can have teachers paid for by the government. Up to now, the teachers are paid in baskets of rice. A basket is like a sack, I think. So you get 4 baskets of rice per child you teach in the Delta, per annum. These people earn $1.50 to $2 a day. You think about how hard it is if they've got 3 children to find 4.5 sacks of rice per child per annum is not easy. Teachers come and tell me that some of their children, some of their pupils, haven't eaten for 2 days when they come to school. So the teachers sometimes give their dinners to them. This is now, not then. So.
Fascinating, all right. And, well, I'm
and
sorry.
you did recognise Aung San Suu Kyi.